Iran security guarantees, and Iran would need to commit to not provide weapons or money to groups that could take violent take violent steps, attack violently the United States, Americans, or our allies. To me, that's kind of the core of the bargain, and it would then be the basis of a grand bargain that would deal with all of the issues that are of concern to Iran and of concern to the United States. It would be very similar to the way that the United States and China fundamentally reoriented their relationship back in the early 1970s. There wasn't a question of, China had to become a nice, gentle country, that Mao had to leave office, that we couldn't deal with him. None of these questions that you hear similarly said about Iran. We didn't do that with China. We basically recognized China as an important country with its own national interests, and we struck a grand bargain with them for fundamental rapprochement. I think we really need to do the same thing with Iran today.
Hillary Mann Leverett, the elections that are coming up in Iran, who is running, and the significance of Ahmadinejad right now, his popularity or not within Iran?
It's interesting, not almost, every president in Iran since the advent of the Islamic Republic in 1979, every president has had 2 terms. They're term limited, which, it's interesting because we often rebuke Iran as a dictatorial country, as an autocratic state. But in fact, they've had elections every 4 years since the advent of the Islamic Republic, and every president has had 2 terms. The democratic process, the election process, is seriously flawed, as your prior guest, Shirin Ebadi, very articulately laid out. But it is an important process. It is a competitive process. It is not a sure thing. So, for example, when Ahmadinejad ran last time and was elected as president, he was the dark horse. He was nobody's chosen candidate, not even the supreme leader, as we sometimes hear. And before him, the reformist President Khatami was elected also in a surprise election. But Khatami, even though he was elected in a surprise election with almost no support from the clerical establishment, he stayed for 2 terms. So here we have Ahmadinejad, who I think also came to office and pretty much as the dark horse candidate. I think he probably is going to serve another term. I think that has more to do with, as we see sometimes in this country, a certain kind of lethargy within the populace, not a very dynamic political debate, and a sense, I think, from the supreme leader and the clerical establishment that it's probably good for Iran, for its stability, to have a president serve for 2 terms. So I think there's a built-in institutional bias in favor of just letting the president stay for 2 terms. He's term limited anyway. He'll be out in another 4 years. So I think that probably the odds are that even with Ahmadinejad taking some hits in his popularity over the past couple of years, particularly because of the economic situation, I think the odds are that he still will be reelected in June. He does have some competitors. The mayor of Tehran, who has a similar background to Ahmadinejad. Ahmadinejad actually was the mayor of Tehran before he became president. This person, his name is Ghalibaf. He is the mayor of Tehran, is looked at as a pragmatic conservative, a technocrat, similarly to how Ahmadinejad was actually viewed before he was elected president. Ghalibaf has strong ties to the Revolutionary Guard, as Ahmadinejad does as well. So the 2 of them, sometimes people say, well, Ghalibaf is going to be a more pragmatic conservative. We often hear that here in the West because I think there's a lot of wishful thinking that somehow we're going to get somebody more to our liking in the polity rather than looking frankly and transparently at what needs to be done substantively between the U.S. and Iran. But I think there's a great tendency here to try to see who's going to be a good player. I don't think Ghalibaf is going to be much better for us in terms of being someone who's more pliable than Ahmadinejad, but he'll be another candidate perhaps. There's some discussion about a reformist candidate running, potentially even the former President Khatami. That may happen. He's giving some signals that he would come back in, but he was similarly constrained during his term in office. I don't think he's going to be some sort of pro-American stealth candidate coming into office that we can say, oh, as long as he's elected, we'll be fine.
Hillary Mann Leverett, we have to wrap,
but
I do want to ask if you see a real shift with President Obama's administration.
I don't. I think you'll probably see a lot of a continuation of the Bush second term, a policy potentially that Bush second term was carrots and sticks. I think Obama is going to try to pursue more carrots, more sticks, which I think will not change the strategic calculation inside Iran. The strategic calculation, I think, is one of self-protection for the country, for the state, and that basic self-defense strategic calculation is not going to be altered by some more economic goodies in terms of carrots.
We're going to have to leave it there. Hillary Mann Leverett, Middle East analyst, thanks for joining us. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us on Democracy Now! This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.